It was a famous venue called Twister. It's a venue called Secret Garden. And then we've got Prince Band Room. So this was the original cushion bar at a famous room called the Gershon Room. But this is the venue with the Saints. I'm pretty sure this was either Fearless or Rabada. Area 61 was a little bit rougher in my opinion than places like One Love. Struggling nightclubs seem to have a knack of catching a light. My name's Danny Rants and I've worked in the music and entertainment industry for over 2 decades. Come with me as I pull back the curtain on Australia's craziest and wildest nightclub precincts in the Clubland Chronicles. Welcome back to Danny Rants. On today's edition, we are venturing through St Kilda, one of Melbourne's most notorious spots. When I was growing up, it was super busy, packed to the brim, and prior to that, it was probably one of the roughest areas of Melbourne. Now, not so much. It's gentrified, it's full of rich people and yuppies, but we're going to follow around and we're going to talk about the stories of yesterday, and we're going to visit some of the clubs that are still there or maybe not there, and we're going to chat a little bit of history. So strap in, let's go. So first up over there we have the George Hotel. The George Hotel was one of the busiest Fridays if you were a private school kid for a long time. There was Sammy Prosser and another guy that were running it at the time, and it was super popular. It used to run every Friday. I think it was called TGIF, Thank George's Friday. I never went there, but it was sort of like a pub club. And I dare say it was important to people who lived in Brighton, but from where I live, not many people went there. Next on the agenda is a little bar that could. It's a venue called Secret Garden. It was been around and been synonymous with security for probably over a decade. It kind of blew up when I was maybe 25, 26. I feel like I couldn't go to a birthday party. Like every 3rd week I had a birthday party there. It was regularly visited by people of the southeast, which is where I'm from. And then later down the track, people that enjoyed motorbikes got really into it. I'm not sure exactly what it's up to now. The guys that own it are Matty Dargs and Sky Graham. Before that was the group that used to own Cushion Bar, and they used to also own Somewhere Bar, and it was that Johnny, Lannis, Jim Johnston and a bunch of other guys. They were involved in the beginning, and it sort of changed owners over time, but there's always been like one owner stayed on and there's more people that have grown. And it's the same as multiple bars around this area. They're originally owned by one guy, and over time those owners changed and shifted into other hospitality venues and new ones come on. But Secret Garden's been around for, I reckon, about 15 years pretty regularly, and it's probably had 10 to 15 owners, I'd say. So you used to walk down this alleyway, and at one point this was Metropole and it was owned by the same guys. Basically, it was so busy, like the overflow from Secret Garden on long weekends or different periods of time would flow into this. So the same guys that own this bigger venue. It's been a while since I walked up here, but normally the guard's sort of standing here. I know it's pretty fucking dark, there's no lights on here. And then you go through the garden. So Secret Garden hidden away, obviously that's part of the reason. You got these doors, it's so fucking black you can't see a thing. And then the outdoor area. So the outdoor area was always where people wanted to sit. So as you can see, there's actually more outdoor space, or as you can hopefully see, there's actually more outdoor space and garden area than there is indoor area, because you'd come here and it was sort of like a late 20 hangout, or mid 20 hangout I should say. They had a lot of classic house and stuff, but you'd spend more time outside than inside, and that was sort of the appeal to Secret Garden. Good bar, good space. One of the places in St Kilda that's continued to do relatively well throughout the last 15 years, as a lot have fallen around it. Secret Garden's continued to prosper, and it has its, like any venue, it has its ups and its downs, but basically it's become like a core part of Melbourne, and it's fun. I advise to go there. It's a little bit less dark now than that little spooky alleyway I was walking down. So over here we have the Saint. So we're going to walk up on the Saint, but basically I'll start to tell some yarns. So effectively, the Saint was the first place that I got paid to attend. There was a guy called Nick Corver that I met at TFU, and he sort of singled me out and shouted me a Jager bomb once, and he said, "Hey, would you like to come down here and work on an event that I do called Fuck Mondays?" So Fuck Mondays back in the day was sort of like the ultimate recovery. You'd go to TFU for argument's sake, then you go to Revolve, and then you would end up here. There was a couple of different places like Cuba and whatnot, but Saint was one of them, and that was my favourite, and it might have been because of its electro roots and the DJs that played there. A lot of the guys from TFU used to play here. I used to get paid $50, a free meal and 5 drink cards to come down. So I'd catch the tram with all the trash bags from my area, or I'll collect a few people from Revolver and we'd come down here and we'd party. So people like Adam Bartis would play down here, Nick Corver obviously, Radiator, more of the OG TFU guys, and some of the younger guys too. We used to come here and watch Adam Bartis and Miles Jr. And that was sort of like the peak of my weekend. It was some of my favourite times. It used to close like 1, I think, and it was free to get into for a very long time. Eventually they moved to Spider Bar, and that was the end of Fuck Mondays. And I still come here, I still love the Saints. So we used to come here on Saturdays sometimes after people's birthdays, because they used to play party tunes, and not many people played party tunes back then. So So it was just a fun place to get pissed. I loved it. It was probably one of my favourite venues in Melbourne. I've got a fair few. 2 of them are on the street. I loved it. And then eventually over time, a new group came in and they bought it and they spruced it up. And then it sort of never really popped off the way it did. It was never run like a club again. And then it got spruced up again. So now it's like kind of a fancy restaurant slash bar. Six space. It's still got the traditional foundations. It's sort of sad when you walk through places that have been gentrified because you can still remember what was in there and where you used to party. So where those people are sitting, where was the DJ decks, and then you sort of party through this whole area, and then they had like a back area, which is still probably there, a back area that you could sit out and eat. Is it still there? So this wine cellar now used to be literally a garden bar, and you could sort of sit out there, smoke ciggies, eat barbecue, and fucking, or not eat. It's up to you what you were participating in that weekend. And then you come out here and listen to electro bangers with everybody else into early hours of the morning. And then eventually TFU end up opening on Sundays, and you used to be able to go there after. So over here we're going to go to another bar called Cushion. Cushion was another venue that was open for a very long time. Originally had the similar owners to Secret Garden. They were there first. So Cushion was one of the venues that was there first. Not sure how long it was around for. My business partner in Empire was one of the original owners of Cushion, a guy called Jim Johnston, who also worked at 161 as a door guy. Absolute fucking legend. Couldn't talk more highly of him. He's moved about an hour from Melbourne now, and he's sort of given up the old nightclub life, but he's still working hospitality, and he's one of the OGs. The man knew how to run a door, and he knew how to manage a club. As a management person, he was fucking one of the best I worked with, but I loved how he would basically make people, he had a knack of making people realise they were a fuckhead without raising his voice. He had a very unbelievable skill set, and that was effectively making someone admit that they were a dickhead to him without even getting angry. So this was the original Cushion bar. I actually didn't know that this is where Bunny was, so this is Bunny. So Bunny is owned by one of the ex-owners of Tramp. So he moved over here just towards the end of Tramp, and he's still running this venue from my understanding. You can tell by the look of it. It's got that trampy sort of vibe to it straight away. That English slash neon slash over the top decor that Matty Giles is famous for. When it was Cushion, it was open all the time. Again, I didn't come here a lot. It was sort of a place that I would pop in before I went somewhere else. But in saying that, it was busy on Sundays, it was busy on Saturdays, it was busy on Fridays. So those promoters and that team, they were very, very good at what they did. And they were very, very good at running small little club bars. And they ran multiple. At one point, I think the guy Johnny that was involved with it had like 4 or 5 of them, had different owner groups, and they were all busy. They were the last of St Kilda venues that sort of stayed busy. That group seemed to do it best. So St Kilda back in the day, in Fitzroy Street especially, was packed. It was like easily one of the busiest areas when I was 18, 19, and then within 3 to 4 years became one of the deadest areas. So those guys continued to live through that storm and weather it for a very, very long time, and continue to make money on the street as it got quieter and quieter and quieter. I can't talk on how the state of it is now, but used to walk down Fitzroy Street on a Saturday, there'd be thousands and thousands of people. Last time I was here on a Saturday, it felt like it was a Monday. We're going to keep walking, guys. There's a couple more clubs down here. We're going to chat through and tell some yarns, and then we're going to move on to other parts of St Kilda. Coneheads behind me and Archie's Pizza have been around as long as Fitzroy Street. Like, I can't remember a time beforehand they weren't there, and you used to come in and get a slice before you headed out or after you left. This place here, I'm pretty sure things have changed and things have been knocked down, but I'm pretty sure this was Rabata. So Rabata, again, was managed by Matt Giles, the owner of Tramp. He had a lot to do with Fitzroy Street in the early days, and then he moved to King Street, and now he's returned, obviously. But I'm pretty sure this was either Felix or Rabata, and we'll continue on. But Rabata was sort of like a well-known Fitzroy club. Again, it was sort of like that post, used to kind of be for an older crowd or older demographic, cocktails, a little bit more fancy than everywhere else, but basically that was Rabata. Now, I don't even know what the fuck this thing was. This is obviously massive now, this place, but there was another joint called Felix. Hopefully I can see it. The yarn that I have there was another one that was a Sunday. I came down with a whole bunch of mates. They had a happy hour. We drank way too much, and then we ended up having a beer fight. So we literally were in the venue with, I reckon there would have been 32 pints, and we were just throwing on one another. We got kicked out, obviously, and then we came outside, and there was a couple of other boys who bought eggs from 7-Eleven, and they started egging us. So I with my missus, and I stank like beer and egg, and she wasn't too stoked. But Sundays at that point used to pop off, so you could go to multiple venues along this way, and you could spend your whole Sunday from fucking midday till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, no problem, before you head over to Chapel Street to finish your night. Man, it's hard to even recognise these places now. Across the road there is the Gatwick. The Gatwick's obviously famous. It was like a They used to call it the Hostel of Hell or some shit like that. It was basically where people from outside of prison or people down in their luck would go and spend their time, and it was run by a lady, super infamous, you can look it up, the Gatwick, but now it's been gentrified to the extreme. So some of those apartments are worth like $2.5 million in that space. Back in the day, you couldn't pay someone $2.2 million to spend the night there, but that's the changes of Melbourne, right? So this club here, at the end of its tender, was Poison. I ran one event here ever, and it was a Kilda Fest day party, which was pretty grim, but we did good numbers and made good cash. But before that, it was Area 61. So Area 61 was synonymous with this area, but was popular for a very, very long time. I know one of the owners was a friend of Joel Fletcher's and Kyle's and myself too, a guy called Strauchy. He was a good lad, and I think he did really, really well. One of the most connected guys I've met or know in Melbourne. I think it was to do with this club. Plenty of dramas there, plenty of dramas on Fifth Street in general. Even now, there's still a lot of homeless people around, sort of trying to scam people and whatnot. I'm pretty sure I just got scammed. But anyway, I just bought a guy a lighter because he asked, and I felt bad for him. And then the guy who I bought the lighter from told me he was a drug dealer. But anyway, that's a long story and is what it is. But back in the day, as I said, we used to bust on the big punch-ons flat out. Area 61 was a little bit rougher in my opinion than places like One Love. There was a guy I know who actually went to jail for a fight that was here, and he bashed me when I was 16. So he was obviously renowned for it, but he got his prize in the end. Getting flashbacks walking down this area was how busy it was, but also to like the mix of people. Where you're in King Street, predominantly young people walking up and down, or bucks parties going to strip clubs. In St Kilda was literally everybody. So it was tourists, it was fucking homeless people, it was mentally ill people, it was gangsters, it was fucking young people coming out clubbing. There was a lot of gay people here. It was everything. It was a real mix, and it kind of had, I guess, an electric feel to it, but at the same time it had sort of like this uneasiness to it. So you would constantly see shit just kick off because St Kilda was wild and still continues to be, just not at the level it was. But I feel like that was the appeal of it. You come down here, you never knew what you were going to get or what you were going to see. The 29th apartment, it's like a backpackers bar. And then we've got Prince Room. So Prince Wales Hotel is one of my favourite venues in Melbourne. It was one of the first venues that I came out to. It was one of the first venues that taught me to love house music. I used to come here for One Love. And we used to go to the bar downstairs, which was a gay bar, and we'd get there at like 7 p.m. and we'd have a few drinks before we'd jump in line at 9 p.m. We tried to be the first people there because it was so hard to get into. We were concerned that if we came in later, we wouldn't be able to get in, and we were like fresh 18 and a half, or we were fresh 18-year-olds, and it was One Love Mania. And that was like the bright pink t-shirts, the headbands, the pony shoes, the Stevie tops, and it was the coolest place to be when I was 18 and 19 years old. And I loved it. It was like, I remember walking in, and that was the first time I fell in love with nightclubs. So I basically walked into that club. I've been to some shitty ones and pubs and whatnot, and I walked into One Love and I saw that One Love sign right at the back. And I was like, fuck me, this is what I've been looking for. And I spent every single week for the next fucking 6 months coming here, trying to get into the photos that were on the CD that used to come out of the mix CD. And luckily for me, I did, one of the last ones. I used to also spend all my waking moments at school on the One Love forum arguing with people about nothing. And in One Love too, there was another area called the Back Room, and that was sort of like the coolest of cool. So all the One Love forumers would hang around there, and it was like, to be a part of that culture was something to endeavour for. And they would have an array of different DJs, sort of up and coming guys from Generic to Nick Foley and a bunch of other people in there, and it held like 40, 50 people. It was fucking, now it's this Back Room, it's the Green Room, and they've made it actually bigger than it was when it was the Back Room. But One Love was just that classic, exactly how you'd imagine a disco when you were younger. Black walls, band room, big fucking disco ball in the middle, awesome electric tunes, great sound system, and that One Love sign on the back of the wall, which I'd love to know who had it. So the guys that ran that were Raf and Frank Catella was the other owner, and they ran that for a very long time, and even still to this day, One Love Records is around. They also had a lot to do with Stereosonic. They ran Stereosonic, I should say, along with Richie McNeil from Hardware. One of the owners went up and did venues in Queensland. The guys that ran it are long-time hospos and entertainment and music guys, and continue to be, and One Love was probably the most respected nightclub ever, in my opinion, in the history of my time doing this. Still to this day, I think a lot of people look back at it as like the beginning of the new. So some of my favourite venues, one of my top parties I ever did was, I did a party here, a sellout, with two guys called Booker Shade. So if you're an old classic music guy, you'll know who Booker Shade is. They're massive. You may not if you're younger. At Booker Shade, we did that show, and when I was growing up, I was munching out to dance floors to In White Rooms and Body Language. And when I ran that show, for me, even though it may not be massive to others, it was an iconic moment for myself because it was someone I grew up with, and it was like a wish list moment. And when I ran that show, I think we sold out the Thursday in 8 minutes, and then we did the Friday night show, which sold out in maybe an hour. So we did 2 sold out shows consecutively back to back at Prince, which was one of the first venues I fell in love with an artist that got me into dance music. And it was a very, very special moment to me that I'll never ever forget. And it was probably in my top 3 events I ever ran, maybe number 1. I've got a video on my Facebook. I'll try to find it and download it, but it literally of Body Language being played. And every time I rewatch it, I just get chills. After that, we did a whole bunch of parties with like techno artists. We had like him and him here, I think. I can't even actually remember who they were because some of them aren't, but they were massive in the G House scene. We did 3 years in a row after St Kilda Fest, and it was effectively free money, I'm not going to lie. Back in those days, there was 250,000 people walking up and down Fitzroy Street for St Kilda Fest. So if you could get a venue, get your hands on a venue, you kind of guaranteed 800-900. So we would get an international, we would chuck it in there, and we would do 800 or 900. It was like giving candy to a baby because every single one of these places would be stacked. I know the owners from Cushion used to tell me that they would do $100,000 to $150,000 in the safe on that day. So St Kilda Fest was such a massive part of this street because when winter came, there would be no one here and summer would be packed. But it got harder and harder and harder, and when St Kilda Fest fell over after COVID, I can't even imagine how people are paying their money with insurances and stuff. But some of those clubs like Secret Garden and Bunny are still here. But back in the day, it used to be littered with nightclubs all through Fitzroy Street. There's one at the top of the street, I can't remember the name of it, that's why I didn't stop there. It used to have like a mouth or lips or something drawn on it, like graffiti on it. But unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it, so I'm not going to go into it. But there would have been 10, 15 clubs plus bar clubs that you used to be able to attend back in the day on Fitzroy Street 15 years ago, and now there's probably 3. Even looking at that smokers area back now, it looks really nice now, but back in the day, you used to go up there and that was the best way to find, if you were looking for any sort of round ones, you could easily find some in the smokers area and you pay up to $45 for them, what a rip. Up that way was another venue called Lotel and a Little Black Door, and Little Black Door was the first time I saw an artist called Adam Bartis, one half of the group Orchestrated. And I used to follow him around when I was 18, so he probably doesn't know that, but Bartis, I used to follow you around. We would go there, and then every other club you would play on a Friday night, just so I could hear him play. I was a massive, massive frother of old Bartis back in the day. Even to this day, they still have massive artists on there. So many artists have sort of sold out venues here, and it's a super iconic moment for them. They go onto the forum and stuff afterwards. It's that mid-tier, 1,000-person room that so many people, I think, in any sort of genre of music appreciate and love. So 29th apartment is kind of been a backpack apartment. It's always busy. There's people always there. Only story I really have of it was my business partner Kai was getting married down the road, and we were staying at the Prince. He got a free room for us, and I was in his groom's party. And basically that same night, we all got poleaxed. So we went to a whiskey. We're going to have a couple of quiet drinks that turned into a couple of not quiet drinks. And then I think I dragged him out of there about 3 a.m. And the next day he didn't remember attending there. So that was my only time I went there. And it was a bit of a laugh, but old Handy, we got him to his wedding on time and he got married. Going back to St Kilda Fest, this whole street used to get 250,000, $250,000. It was the biggest street festival or even festival in the Southern Hemisphere. Basically, you'd come here on that Sunday and there would just be like seas of people and you could just do it if you wanted. All the bars used to get extensions on their license. They could drink outside on the street. And we would come here and just get poleaxed all day. But there would be so many people, and it was one of my favourite parts of the year. Like when that would come, you'd literally ride off Monday and you come here with all your mates and get spastic. And it was so fun and awesome to be able to do that. I know it sounds fucking weird to say, and you just spend the whole day walking up and down Fitzroy Street, Ackland Street, drinking on the foreshore, watching bands, then going to after parties, and it was like there was nothing like it. And it sort of sucks that there's nothing like it still. It's just another thing in the plethora of things that all these young people are getting to miss out on because people just aren't attending things like they used to. There's the Gatwick, but there's like, you can't explain what it's like to have 250,000 people in one suburb and just being able to do what you want until you're here doing it. And you're probably never going to see it because I think even last year they did like 15,000 people to St Kilda Fest, and that's a big fucking difference from 250,000 not 4 or 5 years ago. St Kilda Fest, if you in my early to late 20s, St Kilda Fest was a non-negotiable. You had to come. You would not miss that event for anything. Probably bail on a wedding to go to it. Nothing makes me feel older than walking through these streets, trying to remember like Felix and Roberta. I don't know exactly where they were. I want to tell tales about them, but I can't remember where they are. And it's been so long, it's literally been like 17, 18 years since I've partied in these streets properly that And the streets have changed so much by gentrification that it's actually impossible for me to properly finger them out. So we're at Prince before. At Prince, there's so many famous Australian bands that started there or have filled that room. The list would be so big that I'm not even going to bother. And the next venue after that, which is probably smaller, but it had a famous room called the Gershon Room, where many famous bands played. I know there's a guy called Dave Barrett who used to manage this joint, and they used to do a lot of shit like Method Man from Wu-Tang and all kinds of hip-hop artists, all the way up to, I remember seeing Jamie T here one time, and he forgot his instruments after a Falls Fest. I think it had been cancelled, and it was the weirdest thing. He just literally played songs on an iPod, but we watched it. I think we paid money for it. I was meant to see a guy called Swayze, but my mate Hamo never gave me back money for the tickets. He actually owes me for that, which reminded me. But the most iconic SB story that I have is from an artist that were very famous back in 2000s called TV Rock, which was made up of Ivan Goff and Grant Smiley. Grant Smiley went on to be a very successful hospitality guy in America and Australia, and I came here to watch them perform in the Gershon Room, and it was sold out. We got tickets, thank fuck, and they were going to make a film clip for a song that they just made at the time that went by the name of Flaunt It. So Flaunt It, they were making the film clip for that, so we got down here and we were fucking wearing our tightest yellow and pink t-shirts and our headbands and our high tops, and we gave it our all in the front row. We were pumping our fucking shoulders, doing every good move we've ever known. And they never end up using that footage from that SB show in the film clip, so I don't know what happened to it. Only they do, I guess, but we missed out. But fuck me, did Shawnee B rock that night. Again, I was super young. It was my first time at the SB. I didn't know how iconic it was at that point in that time. I was just devastated that I didn't make that Flaunt It film clip, and I wish I did, because that would have been such a bragging right, because, you know, the words from that song, they resonate with me. So there's a point in that song where Shawnee B, he looks at the crowd and he says, "This is my dance floor, you're just dancing on it." And I can resonate with that when Shawnee said that, because at one point I owned a dance floor and people would dance on it, but it was my dance floor, you were just dancing on it, you know? So me and Shawnee, I think it's something that I guess it's hard to understand, but we both really understood each other on that one sentence. Okay, I'm taking a complete piss there, but to be fair, I've never really thought about it like that. It was my fucking dance floor, and they were just dancing on it. But they were paying the tax. They were paying the tax man. I was the tax man. No lobster, no play, you know what I'm saying? What's wild about the SB is that someone bought it, some big pub group, and then they renovated it. They spent like $11 million in the renovation, and it looked the exact same, because obviously I had heritage listing in it. And when I went in there, I thought it was going to be all fancy and shiny, and they're going to take all the coolness out of it, and they didn't. They basically used the old pieces and spent $11 million on it, making it look old and cooler. And yeah, that's where it's at now, and it's probably one of the busiest places in Melbourne. Like, the lines are ludicrous. Like, they literally go to a point where the venue has to stop them because they get so long, and they get to a point of like hundreds of meters. So I know I said in the last video Emerson was the busiest place on Saturdays. It's probably the busiest club, but SB is probably the busiest place on Saturdays in Melbourne right now. This is a completely unnecessary stop, but it's got nothing to do with nightclubs, but anyway, I'm going to tell it. There's a street in St Kilda called Grey Street, which has been synonymous with prostitutes for forever. I'm not sure if it still is now, but it definitely was. And then there was this area. So I'm behind the back of Ackland Street, and it's called Belford, the car park. And when I was younger, we would drive through here because it was frequented by trans prostitutes, and some of them were big men. You wouldn't fuck with them. I would have been fresh 18 and someone told us to come down here, I guess as a practical joke. And we came down here and the area was humming with trans prostitutes. As we were driving through, my mate wound down my window and locked it, so effectively it looked like I was a customer. And one of the trans prostitutes walked up to me and she goes, "What can I do for you, love?" And she could see that I was completely nervous, and she literally looked him in the eyes and said, "I'll lick the skin off it like a cat." And I was mortified, but it was a funny story, and we used to always finish when we would drive down Chapel Street by going through Belford after that, and then we'd end up at Reva and we'd sort of sit there and have a few durries. But this area here was that area, not related to nightclubs, but I thought I'd tell that young. It's weird these days walking around St Kilda and not fearing for your life, but I haven't really had any dramas really, so it's a different mood here than when I was growing up and visiting St Kilda. This is the only venue that I'm going to talk about on Ackland Street. It's called The Vineyard. The Vineyard was like a hangout that you would come on a Saturday afternoon before you would hit, say, Revolver, or you would hit the Saint, or you would maybe go there after Revolver. And it was a very much a Sunday tradition to come here and piss on in the afternoon, especially in summer. No doubt it still pumps. It's a mad venue. Ackland Street is here. Ackland Street, I'm sure you've all seen it, but it looks amazing. It's a beautiful looking street, always has been. There's another venue down at the end, I don't remember the name of it, I never really attended it, so I'm not going to go into it. But this is the vineyard. We'll do a lap. There it is in all its glory. So you sit outside there drinking beers to the afternoon, loading up or cooling down before you would head back out on a Sunday. Okay, so this is Catini Gardens. Occasionally they do live music in there. Over St Kilda Festival they always did. And then other than that, they would shut down further up there, the Bell Tower, and they've done stuff like the last time I was there was Carl and Eric's Mobile Disco. And then down at Riva they do a whole bunch of festivals too. They do like 7 a year. They do a lot of like massive house artists all the way up to predominantly dance stuff. They don't really do anything else but dance. But it's been going forever, and majority of them sell out. It's run by a guy called Trav Gresh now, and Ash Ibrahim. Before that there was another set of dudes, but it's a very, very successful and well-known festival space that holds about 4,000 to 6,000 people, and it's held really, really massive artists. The venue down there is owned by Public Land, the one that I talked about with Eric and Carl's Mobile Disco, Carl Cox's Mobile Disco. They're a little bit more rigmarole to get an event there because you've got to deal with the council, whereas Riva you don't, it's privately owned land, so you're able to put it together quicker. So promoters prefer it because when you're dealing with council, you have to go through a lot more rigmarole or situations or stepping stones to be able to pull something off, whereas when you're at private venue you don't need those things, and it's a lot easier to do and facilitate. So I would take a venue that holds 5,000 to 7,000 that's owned by private than a council owned one any day of the week, because I just don't want to deal with the council. Riva's one of the biggest private sized festival spaces other than like Flemington or Sydney Mine Music Bowl that are relatively well used for festivals constantly. It's literally on the water. It's on a perfect day, it's fucking hard to beat. Up here we've got Palais Theatre. This is like a forum or a metro back in the day. It's got those awesome high ceilings, that beautiful painting on the roof. It's a theatre. Heaps of massive bands have played there, cut their teeth there, moved on to stadiums or fucking other shows. Iconic for Australians especially. Lots of comedy shows and rah rah rah. But next to it was a place that was synonymous with the 2000s and the 90s. Palais Theatre is up there with the Forum for me in beauty. I had an artist during COVID that did a show there, and it was a small cap, like one of those when they was doing all that weird shit where you couldn't sit next to someone, or you had to wear a mask if you stood up, but you didn't have to if you pissed, and all those weird rules. And we were lucky to do it, so it was like a show on the actual stage. So I think it was like 150 people, and it was awesome having one of my artists and being able to be in the back room and be at the Palais. But I never would have got that opportunity otherwise, because I never managed someone that would be able to sell it out normally. I reckon it would hold 3,000. So it was a cool opportunity to be able to see the back of it. On this here, there was a site at the same time, and it was called Rising Sun or something like that. One of the festivals that I attended here was a rapper called Chillin' It. I was lucky enough to get backstage passes, and we were hanging out, and then I did the after parties at Code and at Prince for this show. So he sold 6,000 tickets during that time, and it was the only time this empty space was used properly. They used it a few times afterwards. I'm not sure if they're still using it now, but they were using it as like an extension to an outdoor Palais. But before that, it was called Palace Theatre, and it got burnt down suspiciously. And basically it was a famous venue called Twister, run by a guy called Mr. Ugly, and I never went there. I know it might sound surprising, I never went there, but it was really massive for suburbanites and country people, and at that time I was sort of attending One Love and TFU, so I never went to Twister, but I've heard many crazy stories. Majority of them revolve around either getting bashed by security or trying to fight security or trying to sneak in. And from what I've been told, there was 4 rooms with all different genres, and you'd start in the main room, and then once whatever you'd purchased in the suburbs kicked in, you'd head over to the techno room and the hardstyle room. But I don't have any stories of Twitter myself because I didn't attend it. Okay, I got home and then I realised I didn't mention Bay Station. So Bay Station was on the Friday night where Twister was, and it was a hardstyle sort of raving, Melbourne rave, sort of Melbourne shuffling venue. Occasionally we would go there if we were out in the city, and we were looking to go pick up some products from a guy called Pixie. And which kind of funny, his name was relatively fitting because he did sell dust. He would go in there, and that car park was renowned for being littered with undercovers. And also in the club, they were everywhere. And I remember you'd go in there, and if you were sitting there parked waiting for someone or whatever, you might be picking a friend up or blah, blah, blah. They would come up to you and knock on the window, and they would legitimately just say, "Hey boys, you know anyone selling ecstasy?" Or, "Hey boys, you know anyone selling ecstasy?" And it was so fucking obvious. I don't reckon they probably ever caught anybody there ever. But in saying that, they should have, because the place was littered with what they were looking for. Bay Station had DJs like Nick Skits, Hellraiser, Jason Midrow, a whole bunch of other people. It was a little bit before my time. It sort of finished up when I was 20 probably. So I missed out on that era, but no doubt there's a million amazing stories that I haven't told yet. Maybe I can get those guys to come on a walk with me and they can tell me some stories, or maybe even the pod. And this is the end of our St Kilda tour. There's some other venues. There's the one where David Hooks passed away, the famous cricketer who got king hit by a bouncer. And then there's also Bojangles, which is at the back of the pier down there, where Chopper Read, I guess infamously shot the Turk in the movie, but in real life too. And that was like a gangster hangout back in the 80s, I believe. And then you had Little Blue, which is again a bar, not a nightclub, that got burnt down. So where I'm standing now was the Palace, where Twister, only got burnt down. Little Blue got burnt down. Bojangles, I believe, got knocked down. And then over here you've got Stoke House and you've got Republica up further there. Republica was burnt down. There was a lot of rumours about who did that, who was involved. I won't go into it because I'd rather not be shot. And then the Stoke House also got burnt down. So the venues down in St Kilda, they really like fire, it seems, because this whole area, there's been 4 venues in 100 metres that have been burnt down, and there's not been one on King Street or Chapel Street that I know of. But most of the venues here, that seems to be how they end, and then they get built into these brand new, gentrified, amazing venues. One of my old friends was a club owner. He used to say the only things that burn down are furniture shops and nightclubs, and there's a reason for it, but I'll leave that to you to decide why that is. Sometimes they get firebombed, sometimes they accidentally catch on light. Sometimes they probably do catch a light. I don't know the full story. Struggling nightclubs seem to have a knack of catching a light. I've run a couple of parties at Stoke House. I've run a couple of parties at that one. I did this event called Day and Night. It was like an R&B event, and we would do it on the water. It was fucking awesome venue. It was a great space. Anything secured when you can actually get people to it is amazing in summer, but it's just so difficult to, as a destination, to get people to these days. It's sad. I hope it comes back, but I think it's just that it just doesn't have the same heartbeat that it used to have. Publica and Captain Baxter down further there. I'm not going to walk there. People still do events in Captain Baxter. The guys that run Levels, Borsch and Boris, and I've had Radman and a bunch of other boys. They are running the Sundays there currently. There's been awesome parties. Nick Russian's another one who regularly runs parties there for the rich and the famous and the beautiful, and they're very, very successful. So just in summertime, when winter comes, this area completely dies out. I just remembered another venue as I'm walking back that got burnt down with Donovan's. That was another one that got burnt down. So that's 5 that got burnt down in this 100-metre square radius. Also too, there's a story that I tell on my TikTok about a creepy dude that sort of was rubbing up against a chick. I won't mention the nationality. And he came on her back and he ran off and then got away with it. But that was over there. So during St Kilda Fest, they have a big stage in that space that I was talking about where Eric and Carl do their event. And there's also Reminiscence done stuff there. There's been Listen Out's another one that's done its festivals in that space. But that was a pretty fucking foul story that happened there. And it really put a dent in that day because it was fucking rank. So in the last decade since I stopped coming here, when it was just sort of clubbers and club rats and mixtures of different people, there's been dramas with people who enjoy riding motorcycles on and off during summer. They seem to like this area, always have. So there's been on and off dramas and situations that aren't necessarily nightclub related, but spill out into the street that involve those sort of groups of people. And then other than that, in the last sort of 6 to 7 year over summer, there's a lot of African sort of gang issues that happen here. They come here, I guess, to swim. Again, it's not in the clubs, but it's sort of become one of those things that has sort of been Security started to become known for. The actual street itself has its own dramas and problems that it faces a lot. Other than that, if you're a trader or a hospitality worker, not only are you dealing with that stuff, the outside world of St Kilda, but you're dealing with people not coming here. The more people that have moved here and decided to live here, the less people visit here, because I don't really know why. It's just the fact it's been gentrified maybe. Maybe it's the fact that too far and too hard. Maybe there's better things to go to or do. I don't really know. But St Kilda definitely has not been the same place it's been for the past decade. And I hope one day we see it come back to life. But currently as it stands, it doesn't look likely. With the current climate of Melbourne in general, St Kilda was already struggling for the last decade, so to see it come back to its full potential in life is relatively, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's not. I don't think we'll see it. I don't think we'll see it the way it was in my lifetime again. Anyway, guys, that's in Kilda. If I forgot somewhere or you want me to go somewhere, please comment below. Otherwise, my next video is going to be, I'm going to do all the suburban clubs. I'm talking Pier 21 to Mint Lounge, up until Pure and Melton, and Orange Whip and Ringwood. We're doing the full circle. We're going to do a full lap of suburban nightclubs, and we're going to tell plenty of yarns, because I've got fucking heaps in those places, and no doubt the venue owners and the people in that area do too. Like, follow, subscribe if you're enjoying this content, and I'll keep doing it as long as you keep watching it. Keep raving, guys, and I'll keep ranting. Peace out. It's a high flying. Oh, fuck.